Every organization today is caught in this constant paradox.
Yeah.
You've got the need for speed, but you also have this absolute mandate for security. And the cloud ecosystem, Azure, AWS, GCP, it's innovating at just a ferocious pace. They're delivering new services, new features, almost daily.
It's a fire hose of innovation.
It is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, your development teams, they're under pressure to publish applications on these new capabilities, like yesterday.
And that velocity is great for business, don't get me wrong.
Of course.
But it also expands your attack surface faster than any traditional security model can possibly cope with.
So it creates this, a seed of perpetual imbalance for security teams.
That's a perfect way to put it. Think of it like 3 vehicles on a highway, all moving at different incredible speeds.
Okay.
You've got the innovation engine from the cloud provider, you've got your own deployment engine, and then you have the threat engine.
The bad actors.
The bad actors. And the moment a new service is released, they are on it. They're immediately searching for that one exploitable default setting, that one tiny misconfiguration.
So security teams are just constantly reacting.
Constantly. And to a multi-vendor ecosystem, which just adds layers of complexity. They're trying to establish consistency in an environment that is, by its very nature, built for divergence.
And that divergence, I think that's the real friction point.
It is.
It's not just that cloud security is different from on-prem, where you control the whole stack.
Right, the hardware, the perimeter, all of it.
It's that the security settings, the tools, the basic language, it differs so much between the cloud providers.
Hugely.
So if you're operating, like most big companies are, in a multi-cloud world, trying to create any kind of security consistency becomes this monumental manual chore.
And that disparity leads to massive gaps. I mean, without some kind of unified authoritative framework, what do you have? You have a patchwork of tribal knowledge and custom scripts.
Which is just not sustainable at scale.
Not at all. Organizations need a definitive starting point. They need a map that cuts through all that vendor-specific noise and gives them a single, verifiable set of best practices.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today is into one of the most significant attempts to standardize and really accelerate cloud defense. The Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark V2 Preview. We're going to go beyond just the summary to explore the very DNA of this framework, which industry standards and, maybe more importantly, which internal strategic playbooks it's built on.
Right.
We'll analyze its structure. We'll focus heavily on its new focus areas like artificial intelligence security and how it promises to deliver, a harmonized control assessment across multi-cloud.
And that's the key. This isn't just a guide you read. It's an operational tool. It's designed to move security from being a documentation problem to an engineering control problem.
So it's the convergence of strategy, technical details,
and critically automation.
So we set the scene with this cloud speed challenge, but let's just dwell on the reality of that for a second. On a Monday morning, what does that speed actually look like for a security architect?
It looks like instant, uncontrolled change to your risk profile. It's that simple.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a dev team adopts a new serverless function service. It's got built-in messaging queues, data caching, all these great integration points.
Okay.
Well, that single service might introduce 75 new configuration settings, and if the defaults are set for, say, performance or ease of use.
And not security.
Exactly. Then you've immediately introduced potential public access or unencrypted storage. Now multiply that by hundreds of services and constant updates. The security team is running a marathon where the finish line just keeps moving further away.
That velocity is why the security baseline just drifts so easily. And like we said, the developers are incentivized to move fast. They're using new features the moment they drop.
Which creates this classic governance conflict. Security teams, they often just lack the cycles to thoroughly vet those new features or establish the right settings before the app goes live.
The Department of No can't keep up.
Right. If the security gate takes 4 days to do a review and the developer can deploy in 4 hours, well, the developer is always going to find a way around the gate.
And that leads to configuration debt, that backlog of security hardening that just, it never gets done.
It never gets done. And the bad actors who are operating like these highly optimized businesses, they understand this dynamic perfectly.
They're not brute forcing firewalls anymore.
No, not primarily. They're constantly hunting for those misconfigured resources, the public S3 bucket, the service principal with way too many permissions. Their entire business model relies on security teams missing just one checkbox out of thousands.
So all of that chaos, that makes it nearly impossible to ensure consistent, secure deployments.
especially across multiple regions and multiple clouds. If every single deployment is a custom bespoke security effort, you cannot scale your defense to match your innovation. It's a huge resource drain.
So if that's the problem, speed, complexity, and consistency, then the MCSB's role has to be about standardization and simplification.
That's it, at its core. The MCSB provides prescriptive best practices and recommendations. It's intended to help you improve the security of your workloads, your data, your services, specifically on Azure, and this is crucial, it's designed to be applicable in any multi-cloud environment.
I want to key in on that word you use, prescriptive.
Yeah.
That suggests a real shift from just, hey, you should be secure, to something more like, to be secure, you need to do A, B, and C.
It functions as an authoritative security catalog.
Yeah.
When your infrastructure team goes to provision a new component, let's say an Azure Key Vault, the security team doesn't need to spend days trying to interpret a high-level standard like NIST. The benchmark gives them a curated list of specific configuration settings, like ensure encryption at rest is enabled using customer-managed keys, and it gives them the exact steps to do it.
Which just drastically speeds up secure deployment.
And it reduces the chance for human error.
But I have to push back a little here. Why do we need a framework of this magnitude?
Yeah.
I mean, why not just use the CIS benchmarks? Organizations have been using those for years.
That's a fundamental question, and it really gets to why the MCSB is operationally necessary. CIS is excellent, but it's for hardening a specific thing, like an OS or a piece of tech.
Right.
It often struggles to provide consistent, up-to-date guidance for the ephemeral, fast-changing nature of cloud services. And more than that, a simple checklist, or even a bunch of checklists, doesn't solve that core problem of multi-cloud monitoring. The MCSB is designed to provide a unified language.
A unified language, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so if you're running on both Azure and AWS, you might have, say, 10 security controls for network segmentation. Azure calls them network security groups. AWS calls them security groups. The configuration steps are completely different. Trying to audit and report on consistency between those two systems using different standards is, well, it's paralyzing.
It's apples and oranges.
It is. The MCSB provides a common control identifier and a common control intent. It lets organizations monitor their configurations consistently from a single pane of glass. It addresses that enormous complexity of managing different security practices between providers.
So the MCSB is like a Rosetta Stone.
Okay.
It translates the platform-specific language of Azure or AWS into a single universal security requirement that one system can monitor.
Exactly.
And that consistency allows security to shift from being this chaotic, reactive process to a standardized, measurable, and hopefully highly automated one.
It centralizes the operational view, and that is the cornerstone of managing compliance at cloud speed.
Okay, so to really appreciate the authority of this thing, the MCSB v2, we have to understand where it comes from. You're saying it wasn't just built in a vacuum.
Not at all. It's a calculated synthesis. It pulls input from a really broad set of holistic Microsoft internal strategies and external industry security guidance.
So it's a blend.
It's a deliberate blend, and that's what gives it its credibility. It ensures the benchmark isn't just some vendor's opinion, but a foundational blueprint for modern defense that actually reflects an industry consensus.
Let's break down that stack of sources. I think it's fascinating how they're leveraging their own operational knowledge alongside these big third-party standards.
It's where the real value is. Let's start with the Microsoft internal and strategy guidance. This is where the framework gets its unique, battle-tested operational edge. These are practices they apply across one of the biggest cloud environments in the world.
So the first layer you mentioned is the Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF.
Right. CAF is Microsoft's huge resource for guiding organizations through a cloud transformation. The MCSB pulls in specific CAF guidance on security strategy, on defining roles and responsibilities.
The shared security model.
Exactly. It details Microsoft's own Azure top 10 security best practices and gives you reference implementations. It really forces you to think strategically about governance before you configure a single resource.
Okay, so from the strategic, we move to the tactical with the Azure well-architected framework.
Yeah, if CAF is about the organization, the well-architected framework is about the workload itself.
I see.
It provides specific, focused guidance for securing the actual applications running on Azure. It makes sure the recommendations aren't just theoretically secure, but that they're also performant and reliable. It bakes engineering best practices right into the security framework.
Now, this next one feels like a big deal. The Microsoft Secure Future Initiative, or SFI. This seems revolutionary in its transparency. What is it?
SFI is probably the most compelling piece of the MCSB's foundation. It's a multi-year, company-wide internal Microsoft initiative.
It's internal.
Internal. Its stated goal is to embed security into the design, development, and operations of every single Microsoft product and service. It's their commitment to shifting from just reacting to threats to building products that are secure by default and by design.
So wait, if the MCSB incorporates SFI best practices, are we essentially looking at the proprietary, battle-tested defensive playbook that Microsoft uses to secure its own global infrastructure?
That's the implication, yes.
We're getting their internal security intelligence offered up as a public benchmark for customers.
That's precisely it, and it raises the bar significantly. You're not getting theoretical advice from academic papers. You're getting operational security intelligence that comes from defending a planetary-scale cloud against nation-state actors and sophisticated criminal groups.
That's a massive commitment to transparency.
It is. It signals that Microsoft believes its own security success is directly tied to the security of its customers.
I have to challenge that a bit, though. I mean, the transparency is admirable, but isn't there a risk? If you publish your internal defensive strategies, aren't you effectively giving adversaries a blueprint of your own internal compliance standard? What's the trade-off?
It's a calculated risk, but the benefit is seen as far outweighing it. The MCSB and SFI guidance, they focus on foundational security hygiene.
The basics.
The really important basics. Things like strong identity controls, robust encryption, continuous monitoring. These are the measures that stop 90% of opportunistic attacks and dramatically increase the cost for an advanced persistent threat.
So by publishing this, they're forcing the entire industry to level up.
Yes. Customers, competitors, security vendors, everyone has to raise their minimum security posture. It makes the entire ecosystem a harder target to penetrate.
And that makes sense. They're sacrificing a little bit of strategic secrecy for a major global security improvement.
Exactly. And the last piece of internal guidance is the CISO workshop. This provides the organizational program guidance, the reference strategies you need to accelerate modernization, and it's all centered on zero trust principles.
Zero trust gets used as a buzzword a lot. How does the MCSB actually embed it in a practical way? For our listeners, what are the actionable parts of zero trust the benchmark insists on?
It forces you to move away from network-centric security. It pushes you toward identity-centric and data-centric security.
Okay, but practically?
Practically, it emphasizes 4 core tenets. First, verify identity explicitly for every single access request, no matter where it's coming from.
Right.
Second, enforce least privilege access. Make sure entitlements are constantly reviewed. Third, use microsegmentation to stop lateral movement. And fourth, make sure every session is dynamically evaluated based on risk signals.
So it's not just saying use zero trust.
No, it's providing the granular subcontrols you need to actually implement that dynamic policy evaluation inside Azure and other multi-cloud identity systems.
So the foundation is robust internal experience, modern architecture, but for this to be truly multi-cloud, it has to look outside. And that brings us to the industry and external frameworks.
This is absolutely critical for its multi-cloud utility. It has to integrate the standards that matter for every regulated business on the planet.
And the most surprising inclusion for many, I'm sure, is the Amazon Web Services, AWS, well-architected framework.
The explicit inclusion of guidance from the AWS framework is the strongest possible evidence that MCSB v2 aims to be an industry-agnostic standard, not just an Azure sales tool.
It's a huge signal.
It validates the claim of multi-cloud utility. An organization can adopt the MCSB and feel confident that its approach to securing core services, even if they're sitting in a rival's cloud, aligns with best practices from both major providers.
And that just immediately simplifies the lives of multi-cloud security architects. They're not translating AWS guidance into a Microsoft compliance report anymore.
No, and that unification is paired with alignment to the big compliance standards. The MCSB integrates the Center for Internet Security, CIS controls, which are great for hardening configurations. It integrates the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST frameworks, which are required for government and regulated firms, and the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI-DSS, for anyone handling payment data.
And here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just a collection of documents. It's a unified security consensus.
Yes.
It has credibility because it's not just Microsoft's opinion. It's a meticulously footnoted synthesis of the most respected internal and external sources. That must save thousands of hours in manual mapping.
By doing all that heavy lifting, the MCSB stops being just a benchmark and becomes the ultimate security reference manual. It covers strategy, engineering, and compliance all at once. And that foundational synthesis is why V2 is such a huge step forward.
Okay, so moving into the specifics of V2 itself, this is clearly not just a minor update. It seems driven by the need to address the newest, fastest-moving risks out there.
That's right. V2 goes much deeper on the technical guidance, and it broadens the scope significantly.
How so?
Well, while V1 gave you the high-level what and why, V2 gives you comprehensive technical implementation details. It gives you granular risk-based guidance and specific implementation examples that are tailored for the platform.
That fills in the how.
It fills in the how for those controls, making them directly actionable for your engineers.
And the most transformative change has to be the commitment to automation. That's the only way you can really tackle that cloud speed challenge you talked about.
Absolutely. This is the operational game changer. The V2 release includes over 420 Azure Policy built-in definitions for automated compliance monitoring.
Over 420? That's a crucial number.
It is. It means Microsoft has pre-coded 420 distinct, verifiable rules that you can instantly deploy across your Azure subscriptions to check if your configurations meet the benchmark standard.
420 opportunities for automated enforcement. Let's analyze the impact of that. If you previously had junior analysts spending hours a week running manual audits or building custom scripts, what happens to them now?
It changes the entire mandate of the security operations team. That tedious manual work of checking boxes and comparing settings against a document, it's drastically minimized.
As the burden of security shifts.
It shifts from manual verification to strategic design and policy refinement. Your security pros are freed up to focus on architecture, on threat modeling, on writing custom policies for really specialized workloads, not just basic hygiene.
This is that shift from documentation to automated engineering control you mentioned.
That's it. It essentially makes continuous compliance a reality, not just a theoretical goal.
So if a developer accidentally enables a public IP on something,
the system can instantly flag it against one of those 420 policies. And in many cases, it can automatically remediate the misconfiguration within minutes before a bad actor even has a chance to discover it.
that's what allows you to scale security alongside cloud consumption.
Precisely. You can deploy 10,000 new resources and immediately know that 420 core security checks are being performed by the platform itself, not by some overwhelmed person.
Okay, now let's talk about the real headline feature, the one that makes MCSB v2 a document for right now. The new domain, Artificial Intelligence Security.
The creation of a dedicated security domain for AI, that's a clear signal. Microsoft recognizes the immediate and critical risks that come with the rapid integration of AI workloads into the enterprise.
From LLMs to machine learning pipelines.
All of it. Security governance has to evolve at the pace of innovation, and right now, AI adoption is just outpacing the security guidance.
We know this new domain is incredibly specific. It contains 7 specific recommendations. What are some of the underlying risks these controls are designed to stop? This is where the depth of this thing really shines.
These 7 recommendations are strategically focused on the unique attack vectors for AI systems, which are totally different from securing a traditional app. Well, they're likely addressing issues like model poisoning, where an attacker introduces malicious data into your training set to compromise the model's integrity.
Okay, I see.
They'll also target security around the training data pipeline, making sure sensitive data isn't leaked during development, and putting robust access controls around those high-value training data sets.
And what about the risks after deployment? Things like prompt injection.
That falls under the operational controls. So the recommendations will cover inference and deployment security. This means strict authentication for accessing the models, especially if they're exposed via an API. And it means controls for logging and monitoring AI usage for anything anomalous. prompt injection, where an attacker manipulates the input to change the model's behavior. That requires validation and sanitization, and these MCSB controls will ensure those safeguards are architecturally mandated from the start.
The implication of introducing a specific AI domain rather than just trying to shoehorn these ideas into existing domains, that feels powerful.
It signals a forward-thinking commitment. I mean, if they waited 5 years for the AI security landscape to mature, the benchmark would be totally irrelevant. By including these 7 specific high-priority recommendations, they're providing immediate, actionable guidance to organizations that are already using these technologies. It establishes a defensive baseline ahead of the curve.
It forces security teams to ask, how are we securing our foundation models? Now, not in a year.
Exactly. It's proof that the MCSB v2 is a living framework that evolves with technology, not some static document.
So for anyone trying to get their head around this, understanding the architecture, the terminology is key. That's what turns it from a giant document into something you can actually use.
It is paramount because that structured terminology is what moves you from the broad strategic vision all the way down to the granular technical configuration.
So let's start at the top of that hierarchy.
Yeah.
The security domain.
The security domain is the highest level grouping. It clusters related security controls that address a specific area. So, for example, identity management, network security, data protection, or this new one, artificial intelligence security.
And V2 has 12 of these domains.
12 of them, and they provide the segmentation you need to assign responsibility and focus your audits.
Okay, so below the domain, we get to the actual requirement, the security control.
Right. The security control is a specific requirement or recommendation, and critically, these controls are defined as technology agnostic.
Meaning?
They describe what needs to be achieved regardless of the cloud platform. For instance, in the data protection domain, you have control DP1, discover, classify, and label sensitive data.
Okay.
That requirement applies whether your data is in Azure, AWS, or an on-prem cluster. It defines the objective.
That's a crucial distinction. The control defines the desired state, but you still need the blueprint for how to get there. I'm guessing that's the job of the security subcontrol?
You got it. The subcontrol is the most granular, specific layer. It provides the detailed implementation guidance, the how. It gives you the technical steps to achieve the control.
So sticking with the example.
If the control is DP1, discover and classify, the subcontrol, DP1.1 might say, implement automated data classification on storage accounts using Microsoft Purview or a compatible equivalent.
So the control DP1 is the policy goal. You must classify your data. The subcontrol, DP1.1, is the technical application. You do this by turning on Purview's classification feature and configuring these 3 specific settings.
Exactly, and that makes auditing crystal clear. The subcontrols are often what bridge the gap between that technology agnostic requirement and those 420 specific Azure policy definitions we talked about.
Okay, and finally, there's the concept of a baseline.
A baseline is essentially a tailored profile. It's a curated set of the MCSB controls and subcontrols, but it's customized for a specific scenario, like HIPAA or FedRAMP, or for an industry like finance.
So instead of trying to adopt all 12 domains and hundreds of controls,
a baseline gives you just the necessary subset. Now, official baselines for V2 are still in the works, but the concept lets organizations in regulated sectors narrow their focus right away.
Okay, so understanding that hierarchy domain, control, subcontrol baseline, that's the key to using it. Now, what are the actual implementation steps, the 3 phases for an organization?
Phase 1 is planned. This is all deep analysis and strategic alignment. You have to review the documentation and critically map the MCSB controls to your own existing required guidance.
NIST, PCI, whatever it is.
All of it. Your internal corporate policies, too.
But the MCSB has already pre-mapped to a lot of common standards, which saves a ton of time. Why is it still important for an organization to verify that mapping internally?
Because of scope and interpretation. It's a great question. While the MCSB has pre-mapped its controls to, say, NIST 853, you still have to determine if the specific MCSB subcontrol satisfies your auditor's interpretation of that NIST control in your specific context.
The auditor's interpretation.
Always. The planning phase also makes sure you identify the right stakeholders, security engineers, app owners, compliance officers who need to be involved in approving and implementing these controls.
Okay, so once that plan is locked in, we move to the ongoing effort. Monitor.
Right, and monitoring leverages the MCSB's greatest asset, automation. Organizations use the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Regulatory Compliance dashboard to monitor their compliance status across their entire estate.
And the key here is that the dashboard monitors not just the MCSB controls,
But all the other control sets like NIST and CIS that the MCSB maps to.
Let me challenge that single pane of glass claim for a second. The recommended tool is Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Isn't this just Microsoft trying to impose its own tooling and governance view on rival clouds? Is it less of a neutral benchmark and more of a vendor strategy?
That's a fair and a necessary challenge. While the tool is Microsoft's, the MCSB standard itself is vendor agnostic at the control level, like we said. The benefit for the organization is centralization. Even if AWS has its own great tools, trying to export that data and normalize it into some internal GRC platform is expensive and time-consuming.
Right.
Defender for Cloud acts as an aggregator. By adopting the MCSB, you choose a unified language, and the Defender for Cloud dashboard acts as the reporting layer that interprets results from both AWS and Azure services and reports them against that common language.
So the operational efficiency of centralized reporting outweighs the vendor tie-in of the monitoring tool.
For many, yes. The MCSB is the standard. Defender for Cloud is just one mechanism for reporting against it.
I see the distinction. And that brings us to the final proactive phase, establish guardrails.
This is where you shift from reporting a problem to preventing it from ever happening.
The enforcement layer.
Absolutely. This is where you leverage those 420 built-in policies. You automate secure configurations and enforce compliance using tools like Azure Blueprints for repeatable environments or Azure Policy for continuous monitoring and remediation.
And in a multi-cloud world.
Crucially, in a multi-cloud context, this means ensuring that equivalent technologies from other platforms like AWS config or service control policies are aligned to enforce the same subcontrols defined by the MCSB. You have to ensure governance parity.
So it's plan, define, map, and assign. Then monitor check status continuously. And finally, establish guardrails, automate enforcement and remediation. It turns a complex document into a manageable, continuous operational loop.
That's the goal.
So we've established the foundation and the structure. Let's bring this all back to the listener. Who benefits most from taking on a framework like the MCSB v2? Let's look at the specific challenges it's designed to solve.
The MCSB really addresses the full spectrum of cloud maturity and compliance needs, from organizations just starting out to those under the most stringent regulatory pressure.
Let's start with the cloud newcomer. This is the organization or its service partner just dipping their toes into Azure or AWS for the first time.
For the newcomer, the challenge is just sheer overwhelm. They need immediate, authoritative best practices.
Right.
Without the MCSB, they're forced to spend months researching insecure defaults, trying to interpret generic standards in a cloud context. The benchmark gives them an immediate, secure deployment template.
It eliminates that initial high-risk period.
Exactly. Where services are launched with overly permissive settings, it acts as an instant security maturity boost, raising them immediately above baseline risk.
Okay, next up, the organization that's been in the cloud for a while, but they realize their security posture is a mess. It's inconsistent. It's riddled with configuration debt. This is the improving existing posture use case.
These organizations use the MCSB for strategic maturation. They run a gap analysis comparing where they are now against the MCSB's synthesized best practices. And because the MCSB incorporates that strategic guidance from SFI and Zero Trust, it helps them identify their top systemic risks. Not just patching vulnerabilities, but fixing architectural flaws like weak identity controls or overly broad network access.
So they can use it to prioritize what to fix first.
Based on the benchmark's consensus view of what the highest impact risks are.
Okay, the third challenge, and this affects almost every large enterprise today, is the multi-cloud challenge.
This is maybe the MCSB's most powerful utility. Organizations using multi-cloud environments, and again, Azure and AWS is the dominant pair, they suffer from tremendous operational friction trying to align security.
We talked about this.
The MCSB provides that unified, technology-agnostic framework they need. For instance, an organization can report that they are compliant with MCSB Control IM2, enforce multi-factor authentication for privileged users.
Whether that user is in Azure Active Directory or an AWS IAM role.
Exactly. It simplifies the audit trail and lets the security team evaluate the security intent of the system, rather than getting bogged down in platform-specific syntax. It allows them to maintain that unified visibility we discussed.
Okay, moving to use case 4, Pre-onboarding evaluation. This happens before a service is even approved.
Right. This is for your architectural review board, your procurement teams. The MCSB becomes the security gate for innovation. Teams can use the benchmark to evaluate the inherent security features of a potential new service, say a new database offering or a new AI service, before it gets added to the company's cloud catalog.
So if the service can't be configured to meet the MCSB requirements for data encryption or access control,
The architecture team can deny its usage, mitigating risk before it ever even materializes in production. It shifts security consultation much earlier in the service lifecycle.
it's an innovation accelerator, not a blocker, because it provides clear guardrails.
That's a great way to put it.
And finally, the group with the highest stakes, highly regulated industries.
Customers in government, finance, healthcare, they have to meet these incredibly stringent compliance requirements mapped to frameworks like CIS, NIST, or PCI. If these organizations had to manually translate NIST controls into specific Azure configurations, the process would take months and months. The MCSB provides an immensely efficient, pre-translated approach.
Because its controls are already mapped to these critical industry benchmarks.
Exactly. The compliance teams can skip that whole manual interpretation phase and move straight to automated monitoring and enforcement. It vastly accelerates their audit readiness and compliance reporting.
So the MCSB really transforms compliance from this manual, time-consuming bottleneck into a systematic, accelerated process. It becomes the centralized source of truth, so everyone from the developer to the CISO is speaking the same security language.
To synthesize everything we've discussed, the MCSB v2 is so much more than an updated checklist. It's a living strategic framework. You can see that by its rapid iteration, its recent update in late 2025.
Right.
It's specifically designed to inject order, standardization, and automation into the chaotic speed of cloud security. It provides technical clarity, but also strategic alignment with modern security philosophy like zero trust and foresight into emerging risks, which we see with the new AI security domain.
And we've seen that whether you're trying a secure deployment for the first time, wrestling with compliance across multiple clouds like Azure and AWS, or navigating the brand new threat landscape of AI, using a structured benchmark like this provides absolute clarity and consistency. Its foundation is so robust, synthesizing Microsoft's own internal defensive intelligence through SFI with external authorities like NIST and CIS. It really is a security consensus document.
I think this is the next evolution of cloud security governance. It's moving the industry standard from manual documentation to automated policy enforcement, all unified under a single, coherent structure that's engineered for consistency and rapid adaptation.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. The fact that Microsoft is publishing components of its Secure Future initiative, its internal proprietary defensive playbook, as public automatable benchmarks, well, raises a fascinating question about the future pace of required knowledge. If internal defensive strategies are now immediately externalized as public compliance standards, the time lag between the discovery of a new security best practice and its mandatory implementation across the industry just shrinks dramatically.
The cycle gets much shorter.
Much shorter. So this raises an important question. How much faster will cloud security continue to accelerate now that internal vendor-specific defensive playbooks are being published as global mandates? What new unforeseen threat domains, maybe related to quantum computing or fully sovereign identity solutions, will we see forced into the MCSB v3, compelling security professionals to learn and deploy new controls at an ever-increasing pace? Your ability to secure the cloud is now defined by your ability to learn at the speed of the vendor's internal defensive cycle.